So we're at the very top of Kuf Nun Gimel, where today's daf is Kuf Nun Gimel. First line, Amar Rav Yehuda bered Rav Shmuel bar Shelat. So Rav Yehuda said that Rav Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel bar Shelat, said, Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav, Mehespedo Shel Adam, from the eulogies of a person, meaning the eulogies that are given for him after he passes away, Nikar im ben ha'olam abahu im lav. You can tell if he is destined for the world to come or not. Rashi says, She'im kasher haya, if this person was a decent person, akol bochin alav, everybody will be crying for him. Umoridin dimaot, umisaprim shivcho, everybody's going to be crying and telling of the praises of the person if he's really a decent person. So the Gemara says, is that really true? Amar le Rav Shmuel bar Shelat, but Rav said to Rav Shmuel bar Shelat that achim behespeda dehatam ka'imna. He said to him, when I die, be very good, make sure to do a very good job with my eulogy, because I'm going to be there and I'm going to be listening. Right? So Rashi says, "Bishat mitati hitametz behesped," right? To be really good with it. That I want all the people to be crying and everything at my funeral. And so why did Rav have to warn Rav Shmuel bar Shelat? Doesn't he trust that, of course, if he's a tzaddik and everything, his hesped will be good, because you just said that if somebody's hesped is good, that means that they're going to Olam Haba. Rav should assume my hesped is going to be good because I know that I'm a good guy. So what's the answer? That what does it mean? That if the person, in other words, you can give a good eulogy for a bad guy. Right? So really, Rashi says, "La'olam chamume ba'eh, she'en bnei adam nechmarim kol kach al zaken." People don't get as emotional when an old person passes away because they knew that the person didn't have that long to live. That they were, if a young person dies, it's viewed as a tragedy. If an older person dies, not so much. So Rashi says, adam chasid ki mechamemu be'espeda mechamemu v'chu. But for somebody who is a great tzaddik, people will cry anyway. And the point is that you need to try to, if you give a bad eulogy, the point is that if a good eulogy is given and people don't cry, then that's a bad sign. That means that people didn't really care about the person so much. If no eulogy is given and people don't cry, we can't blame them. So Rav was saying, make sure to do the best eulogy you can, so people will cry, and that will mean that I'm really destined for Olam Haba. If you don't make an effort, then you can't really tell.
Just the people crying, not the eulogy.
Right. In other words, if a no eulogy is given and people don't cry, that doesn't mean anything. And if a bad eulogy is given and people don't cry, that doesn't mean anything either. But if a good eulogy is given and people cry, that's a sign that the person was really a great person. Amar le Abaye le Rabba. Abaye said to Rabba, "Kegon mar desanu le kulod pumbeditai man achim hespeda." He said, "But you, everybody in Pumbedita hates you." Okay, so because Rabbah was a very tough leader, and the people in Pumbedita were always trying to pull fast ones, get away with things and trick people, fool people, and he was really tough, and he was like a very strong leader enforcing the law, making sure that people did things the right way and dealt ethically with one another, and so there was a lot of resentment towards him. So he said, "Who's going to be able to deliver a hesped that's going to inspire people to cry if people don't like you?" So Amar Lei, Mistaya at Rabba bar Rav Chanan. As long as you and Rabba bar Rav Chanan are there and you give a good hesped and you're crying, I know that I'm okay. In other words, if the bad people don't cry for the great person that dies, that doesn't mean anything either. So if there's no eulogy given, that doesn't mean anything. If a good eulogy is given and people don't cry, that might be a sign that the person wasn't such a great tzaddik. But if the people are bad, then that doesn't mean anything either. It's only when good people don't cry at the death of a tzaddik that we start to question if he was really a tzaddik or not. Pa'amine Rabbi Elazar Merav. Rabbi Elazar asked Rav the following question: Ezu ben Olam Haba, who is destined for Olam Haba, for the world to come. Amar le ve'oznecha tishmana davar me'acharecha lemor ze haderech lechuvo ki taminu v'chi tasmilu. That if at a person's funeral they say, the following pasuk is quoted, that your ears will hear something behind you saying, "This is the way to go, don't turn right or left." In other words, if people recognize you as somebody to emulate at your funeral, then that's a sign that you're destined for Olam Haba, because people recognize you as a great person. They want to emulate you. They want to imitate you. Rabbi Chanina says, Kol Shitat Rabbeinu no chai menu. The sign that you're destined for Olam Haba is if your rabbis, if your teachers are satisfied with you and consider you to be a good person. We go back to Kohelet, which describes the death of a person, the decline, the falling apart, and the death of a person. So back to that pasuk, it says that the Sofdim, that the eulogizers will go around in the city. So Bnei Galila Amre, the people of Galil used to say, Ased Varim Lefnei Mitatecha, do things for in front of your coffin. What does that mean? Do things so that the person standing in front of your coffin will have something to talk about. If you don't do anything in your life, there's not going to be anything to say. Bnei Yehuda Amre, the people of Yehuda said, Ased Varim La'achar Mitatecha, do things for after your coffin. What does that mean? Same thing. Do things so that people will have something to speak about when you die. So and there's no contradiction between saying in front of or behind your coffin. In some places, in some places, so for example, in Galil, the person who was giving the eulogy stood in front of the coffin, and in Yehuda they stood behind the coffin, so that's why they had a different expression. But the point was, live your life in a way that there's something to tell when you pass away that reflects positively on you. Tanan Hatam, we learned over there in the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer says, Shuv yom echad lefnei mitatecha, return, do teshuvah one day before you die. This is of course from Pirkei Avot. And Shalu Talmid David Rabbi Eliezer, the students asked Rabbi Eliezer, V'chi Adam yodea ezehu yom yamut. Does a person know what day he's going to die? How can I tell you, do teshuvah the day before you die, if you don't know when you're going to die? So how can you use that? So Amar he said, Yashuv hayom. That's why you should do teshuvah today. Shem hayom l'machar, because maybe you're going to die tomorrow. And that way, if every day you know that it could be your last day, and you repent every single day, you do teshuvah every single day, so your whole life you're growing, you're developing. This is exactly what King Solomon said in his wisdom. That Shlomo HaMelech said that at all times your garments should be white and oil should not be missing from your head. What does it mean in all moments your garments should be white? It means it means that a person, that they should always be in a state of repentance, in a state of teshuvah. They should be their best always. Don't say, I'm a bad guy, but I have time to change, I have time to improve. You don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. So that's why you have to immediately improve. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Mashal melech. It's like a king. Shizimen labanim. That he brought his, that he invited his servants to a meal. But he didn't tell them when it was going to be. Just like Hashem doesn't tell us when we're going to come to Olam Haba, He doesn't tell us. The wise ones immediately got themselves dressed up and ready. And they sat by the palace, waiting for the time that the meal would take place. Amru, they said, is there anything missing in the king's house? Meaning to say, it could be any minute. This meal could be any minute. The fools said, and they went to work. Amru, they said, they said, it's going to take a long time for the meal to be ready. We'll go do some work now. And when we hear that it's time to come, we'll come. So what happened? But suddenly the king says, okay, now it's time for the party. Then what happens? That all the smart people who are ready go right in their best, wearing their, so to speak, their Sunday best, or we would say their Shabbat best, right? And the fools, the fools go in all dirty from working because they weren't prepared. So that the king was very happy to see the wise people and very disappointed and angry with the fools. Amar, he said, that those who prepared themselves for the meal, they should sit down, and they're going to eat and drink. Those who did not prepare themselves are going to stand here and look and watch everybody else eat, because I'm not going to let you messy guys come into my party. You're going to ruin my party. So the same thing. We don't know when we're going to be called to the ultimate reward. So if we're already 100% ready, we're tzaddikim every second, so anytime that it happens, we're prepared. And we don't look like fools. If we say, no, I've got years to go, I've got 10 years, I've got 100 years, I've got whatever. So then what ends up happening is at the last minute, boom, a person's called and they're not ready. Now they can't go in. The son-in-law of Rabbi Meir said in the name of Rabbi Meir, hey, and then you're in. No, it's not even that good. According to the first story, the servants who were dirty and didn't prepare themselves stand outside and watch everybody else party. Rabbi Meir said, no, that's not true, because they still look like they're butlers. They still look like they're working in the palace. They're part of the party. Ela elo ve'elo yoshvin. Rather, both of them get to sit in the party. Halalu ochlin v'halalu re'evin. One group is hungry, and one group is eating, and one group is hungry. Halalu shotin, these are drinking. Halalu tmeim, these are thirsty. Shenemar ko amar Hashem, as Hashem said, Hine avadai yochelu. He said, my servants will eat. Ve'atem tiravu, and you will be hungry. Hine avadai yishtu, my servants will drink. Ve'atem titzmau. This is from Yeshayahu. And my servants will drink, and you'll be thirsty. Hine avadai yismachu, ve'atem tevoshu. That's the end of the pasuk. That my servants will be happy, and you will be embarrassed. That's the end of the pasuk. And then hine avadai yarono mituv lev ve'atem titzaku mik'ev lev. And the following pasuk is, my servants will be celebrating from a goodness of heart, and you will be crying out from pain of your heart. In other words, the point is that the good people and the wicked people, if the good people go inside and they get to eat at the Suda, and the bad people stand outside, it looks like they're part of the staff. It's not clear that they are being excluded. So by bringing them in, and they sit there, but they don't get any food, and they sit there and they don't get to drink anything, so that's even worse. So that's really what happens. They get to come in, but they don't get to partake, and that's the worst situation that could be. Davar acher, another interpretation. What does it mean at all times your clothing should be white? Elu tzitzit. It's talking about wearing tzitzit. You should wear tzitzit all the time. V'shemen al roshchalu al yachsar, and oil should never be removed or never be missing from your head. This is talking about elu tefillin. This is talking about tefillin, that they should never be missing from your head. In other words, the mitzvot that you can be fulfilling all the time, like tefillin and tzitzit, these are mitzvot that you should fulfill. You should keep yourself fulfilling all the time. Why should you miss the opportunity to fulfill them?
So this is not like a hell kind of punishment. The punishment is not getting the reward.
Right, just not getting the reward, yeah. Hadran alach shoel, hadran alach shoel, hadran alach shoel. We finish the 23rd parak, and we begin the 24th and final parak of Masekhet Shabbat. Mishech shich baderech, a person who gets caught on the way. This has happened to many people many times, that they get stuck. They're on the way home for Shabbat. The sun goes down, and they're stuck. This person has a donkey with him, he's got money with him, he's got everything, he doesn't know what to do. So what does he do? Noten kisol nochri. If there's a non-Jewish person there, ask the non-Jewish person to take your wallet for you, take it home for you. If he doesn't have a non-Jewish person with him who can carry it, he puts it on the donkey. Now, both of these things you wouldn't normally do. You normally are not supposed to ask a non-Jew to do work for you personally on Shabbat, because it's not a good situation to utilize people to do malacha for you on Shabbat. For the community is different. That's why we allow it for communal reasons. But for an individual, you're not supposed to. So if he doesn't have a non-Jew around to help him, then he can put it on the donkey. As soon as he comes to the first secure area, the outer courtyard, he takes everything off of the donkey that he can remove, that he's allowed to take. In other words, the non-muktzeh items, and whatever he's not allowed to touch. Let's say he had things that were muktzeh, so he just unties the burden on the donkey. He can't leave it on the donkey all Shabbat, that wouldn't be nice. So he unties the burden and it will fall on the ground, and he'll just have to pick it up after Shabbat. That's all. Okay, we're going to see later in the Gemara, what does he do if he has breakables and stuff, fragile items. So it talks about what to do then. You can't just let it fall on the ground. That doesn't make any sense. But the point is that you're allowed to do things that you normally wouldn't be able to do in order to save your property.
So the money is left on the ground in the courtyard?
In the courtyard that's secure. It has to be a secure courtyard where you know everybody.
And if it's not secure?
Then you would keep going until you get to a secure place. So the Gemara says, why is it that the rabbis allowed you in this case to use to basically give your money, give your wallet to the non-Jew to carry for you? Why did they allow you? Because they realized, the rabbis understood, that a person cannot deal with parting with their money. They don't want to lose their money. If you don't allow him to get someone else to carry it for him, he's just going to carry it himself. He's just going to carry it on Shabbat. He's not going to be able to part with his money.
How do you trust
somebody that you trust? It has to be someone you trust, obviously. So he says, Amar Rava says, Davka kiso. That's only his wallet. Aval mitziyah lo. But if it's something he just found on the ground, he found a nice a lost object that he wants to keep, that he can't have somebody carry for him because it's not his, and he's not that attached to it. He just found it. He didn't work for it. So what? No, he just has to leave it. In other words, he's not allowed to do anything to save it because it's not something he has an attachment to. He just found it. If it's your paycheck, He worked hard. That's one thing. Pshita, it's obvious. Kisotanan, it says in the Mishnah, you're allowed to give your wallet, implying only your wallet, not a lost object that you found. What might you think? Hu hadin dafilu mitziyah. That you might have thought even a lost object would be included. V'haide katane kiso, or chat de milta katane. Maybe you would have interpreted the Mishnah as giving the example of a wallet, but really any possession that you have, even if you just found it, you can ask a non-Jew to carry it for you on Shabbat. So the answer is Kamash Malan, that's not the case. But that's only if you didn't find it before Shabbat. In other words, if you found it on Friday, and you already took possession of it, and you consider it yours. So now, it's the same as any other possession you have. But if you're walking on Shabbat and you see a $100 bill on the ground, you can't say, hey, come over here, carry this for me home because I don't want to lose it. That's what you're not allowed to do.
I once walked by a 20.
Right, yeah. It's on Shabbat.
You saw it on the ground and you shove it into the bush or something like that.
Well, you're not allowed to touch it on Shabbat. You're not supposed to touch money. Just gotta leave it.
You can't use your feet?
Well, you shouldn't. Yeah, so but I mean, there's some who allow you to kick things with your feet. I guess in theory it might be possible. But it's definitely that depends on that. Even if you were able to do that, it would have to be an easy, thing that there's a bush right there. You're going to kick it under. Otherwise, where are you going to
look for it?
It was gone. Somebody else had gotten it. Yeah, so there's a famous story about that, about the kid. Remember the story about the kid that sees the gold coin, the very poor kid, he sees the gold coin on Shabbat. And he went in Jerusalem, and he went and stood in the street with his foot over the coin for hours because he really needed the money because he was so poor. And then an Arab kid came and knocked him over and took it. And then he was really sad. It's a true story. And then he was crying, and he came to the rabbi and at Sudash Lishit, and then after Shabbat, he talked to the rabbi, and he said, "Why were you crying?" And he told him the whole story, and he said, "Well, you know what? I have a gold coin right here, and you did such a great mitzvah not picking up that coin, even though it was Shabbat, and you really needed the money. You stood there for so long because you didn't want to violate Shabbat." He said, "I want the reward of the mitzvah that you did for standing there. I want the reward. So I'm going to give you this gold coin, the same type of gold coin that you were trying to save. I want the reward for the mitzvah, honoring Shabbat that you didn't pick it up." He said, "And I'm going to give you the coin for the reward in exchange for the reward that you are going to get for not having picked up that coin." And the boy's like, "If it's that valuable, I don't want to take the money." It's a famous story. Okay, so now we have another version of this. Ikata Amri, another version of the discussion is Ba'ir Rava asked a question. What do we say about a lost object that he finds on Shabbat? Do we say that since he found it before Shabbat, it's considered like his own possession? So according to the second version, he raised the question, if you found an object right before Shabbat, you've taken possession of it, is it now considered the same as something that you actually worked for and earned? Or do we say that no, you cannot ask a non-Jew to carry that because you didn't work for it, you didn't earn it, and therefore you don't have the same attachment to it as you have to other lost objects. So basically what the halacha is that it applies to anything. If you found an object before Shabbat, you're allowed to consider it like your possession, just like something that you earned. Something that you found on Shabbat, you're really not supposed to ask someone to carry it for you.
In the Gemara, when they talk about asking a non-Jew to do this,
right,
are they talking about that hinting kind of stuff?
No, you're allowed to just do it. You're allowed to just do it. There was a special takana that they made that they wanted you to just do it because they said if you don't do it, you're going to end up carrying it because you're not going to leave your life. I mean, my brother once had a situation that he was in a subway or somewhere in the city, and he saw two Hasidic guys sitting there, and he's like, "It's Friday. What are you doing sitting here?" They said, "Well, our train was late. We have a ton of jewelry and money in these suitcases, and we can't travel with it on Shabbat, and we're not going to make it home. So we're just going to have to sit here the whole Shabbat with our stuff on the street." And so my brother said, "Well, let me help you." And so he went and got them a non-Jewish person who brought it into his office and locked the door in his office. And he said, and then they were able to walk home to wherever they needed to get, or get home in time for Shabbat. And then on Sunday they came and they got it from him. And these things happen. It happens. Anyway, so the next piece, any monochri, so tamad, any monochri, hayesh monochri, lenochri yehivle. So what's the reason why? There's a pecking order, as they say, an order of preference. If there's a non-Jew there, we give it to the non-Jew. If there's not a non-Jew there, we give it to the animal. We put it on the animal. So my tama, what's the reason? Chamor atam tzuvel shevitato, nochri atam tzuvel shevitato. The reason is because a non-Jew is not required to keep the Sabbath, doesn't have to keep Shabbat. But your donkey, if you own a donkey, the donkey is also required to keep Shabbat. You're not supposed to work your animals on Shabbat. So that's why we prefer to give it to someone who is not obligated to observe Shabbat at all, rather than put it on our donkey, who we're really not supposed to do work on Shabbat. So what if you have a cheresh, shoteh, katan? These are three categories of people who are not obligated in mitzvot. One is a deaf mute, cheresh. He can't speak and he can't hear. One is a shoteh, somebody who's mentally incapacitated. Somebody who's retarded or severely mentally, severely low intelligence. And then you have a katan, a child who's under bar mitzvah. So in that case, a chamor manachle. And so the next step on the pecking order is, if you have one of these three human beings who is exempt from mitzvot, and you have the animal, you should go with the animal rather than the three Jewish human beings. Why? Because they're still Jewish, so they still have a connection to Shabbat, and they're still people. So better to put it on the chamor than to put it on the donkey than to give it to them. So what's the next step? What if cheresh v'shoteh? What if you had a deaf mute and a mentally incapacitated person? So what's better? L'shoteh. You should give it to the mentally incapacitated person. He's considered completely exempt from mitzvot. The cheresh less so. Shoteh v'katan. What if you have somebody who's mentally incapacitated and a child? So there, l'shoteh, you give it to the one who's mentally incapacitated, because the child is actually going to one day be fully capable of and obligated in mitzvot, so it makes more sense to give to the one who is mentally incapacitated. So the one who's a deaf mute is considered to have some da'at, some level of awareness, just not enough to be obligated in mitzvot. The shoteh is even lower. So now the question is, the next question is, by the way, they asked the following question, cheresh v'katan, mai. So now what about a deaf mute versus a child? So a deaf mute is not completely mentally gone, but he's not fully competent. And a child is the same. He's not yet an adult, but one day he will be an adult. So he's not incompetent, but he's lacking in his level of responsibility, let's say, for mitzvot. So who should we choose? Aliba de Rabbi Eliezer lo tibaylach. Don't ask according to Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braita, Rabbi Yitzchak omer mishum Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Yitzchak said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that tirumat cheresh lo teteh l'chulin b'pnei shu safek. According to Rabbi Eliezer, actually a cheresh, a deaf mute, we consider not a definitely incompetent person, but a possibly exempt person. So since he's only possibly exempt from mitzvot, let's say it's a case-by-case basis, we could say sometimes he might be, sometimes he might not be, or we're not really sure what the status of the deaf mute is. So if that's the case, so certainly we're not going to give it to him to carry, because it's quite possible that he's considered responsible. A child, we know, isn't obligated in mitzvot. However, but the rabbis completely exempt the deaf mute from mitzvot. The Tan, as we said in the Mishnah, we said that there were 5 people that if they separated the tithes or the terumah from produce, it's an invalid separation. Who are the people? Cheresh, shoteh, v'katan. Okay? The first 3 are deaf mute, a person who's mentally incapacitated, and a child. And somebody who separates terumah, he separates the portion for the kohen from produce that doesn't belong to him. He has no right to separate it. Or somebody, or a v'nochri shetaramet shel Yisrael afilu b'rishuto and terumato terumah, and a non-Jew who separates terumah even with the permission of the Jew, because since the non-Jew is not obligated in the mitzvah, he's not obligated in the commandment of separating a portion of produce for the kohen, so he can't do it. What he does is invalid. So the point is, though, according to this, a cheresh and a katan are the same. A deaf mute is exempt from mitzvot completely. Not like Rabbi Eliezer said that we're not sure about a deaf mute. A deaf mute and a person and a child are exactly the same. They're both not responsible for commandments. So which one should we choose? So the question is, so what should we do? So he says, so my, what, lacheresh yehivlei, de katan atil echlal da'at, o dilma lakatan yehivlei, de cheresh atil achlufei bagadol pikech. So the question is, what should we do? We could give it to the deaf mute, because we say, listen, the deaf mute has a permanent condition. He's never going to become more capable than he is. The child, on the other hand, is going to. So maybe the child he's a future adult. Right? So we don't want to give him work to do on Shabbat. We'll give it to the cheresh. We'll give it to the deaf mute. Or, on the other hand, you could say, a child, everyone knows they're a child. A deaf mute looks like an adult. Maybe people will think you can just give it to another Jew to carry for you. So we don't want that to happen. So there are some who say, okay, so there are some who say you give it to the deaf mute, and some who say you give it to the katan. What happens if you don't have any of these? You don't have a non-Jew around, you don't have a donkey, you don't have a child, you don't have a mentally incapacitated person, you don't have a deaf mute, there's nobody else, you're by yourself. You don't even have a donkey with you, you're just walking. So what do you do then? So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Od acheret haita velo ratu chachamim legalota. There was another secret way you could do it that the rabbis didn't want to tell you. They didn't want to reveal it. My od acheret haita. What was this additional strategy? Molicho pachot midal damot. Technically, carrying in a public domain is only a violation of Shabbat if you walk 4 amot, about 6 feet. What if I walk 1 foot and I stop? I walk 1 foot and I stop. Completely stop. 1 foot and I stop. I never did a complete action of Chilul Shabbat. I never violated Shabbat completely. So that would be the last resort. So amai lo ratu chachamim legalota. Why didn't the rabbis want to reveal this secret way of doing it? Mishum kevod Elohim haster davar uchvod melechim chakor davar. Because it's an honor to God to hide something. In other words, since people will not be able to strictly abide by this, they might overstep it, literally. In other words, they're not going to know exactly how far they can walk. So they might make a mistake and carry the full 4 amot by accident. So they didn't want to openly tell people to do this as an ideal, because they didn't want people to make a mistake. But in an absolute emergency where there's no other option but to walk walk 2 feet and stop, walk 2 feet and stop, walk 2 feet and stop, you'd be allowed to do it.
So when I had my wallet at that Yom Kippur that I told you about,
right,
and I discovered it, I could have...
That would have been a case where you might have done that.
A deaf mute or a donkey, huh?
If you had a deaf mute or donkey around, right, exactly. Now, that might have been different because this is talking about a case where you were... some say that the same rule applies if it's already Shabbat and you realize you have it. Some say that this rule is only if you left before Shabbat actually started. But I think most say that even if you left on Shabbat itself, you'd be allowed to do that.
I'm surprised that they give that out.
Yeah, it's an interesting... Yeah. So v'hacha mai kevod Elohimika. What is the reason why they felt it was an honor of God not to reveal the secret strategy? Because dilma atila atuye daladamot b'rshut rabim, because you might overstep it and end up carrying completely. Tani, we learned in a Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, Bo bayom gadeshu se'ah. On that day, they filled in the se'ah. What is the metaphor? Like you have a big thing of produce. There's still spaces of air in the big container, and you put something smaller that fills in the gaps. In other words, that day they filled in the gaps in all the gezerot that they made. Rashi explains that we learned much earlier in Masekhet Shabbat about all the Yudchet gezerot, the 18 gezerot that they made in among Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, when Beit Shammai overpowered Beit Hillel, and one of them was noten kisol enochri, that they said that if a person is stuck on the road, they can give their wallet to a non-Jew and have them carry it. Okay, and bo bayom gazru shelo yolichenu pachot midal damot. That very day, they made this gezerah not to carry it less than 4 amot at a time in an emergency. Why? Because they didn't want the person to use that strategy, because they were afraid that he would accidentally carry it completely. So in other words, they filled in the gaps. There was a gap in the gezerot because they hadn't prevented one of the ways a person could do it that could cause them trouble. So Rabbi Eliezer said it was a good thing that they prohibited it. Okay? However, Rabbi Yoshua Omer, Bo bayom achakusa, that day they overfilled and it overflowed. Meaning, according to Rashi, that they overstepped by prohibiting a person from carrying it. Pachot midaled amot. They should have allowed a person to carry it less than daled amot at a time, according to Rabbi Yoshua. This is Rashi's interpretation. Mashal Rabbi Eliezer lemad davar domeh. What is it similar to according to Rabbi Eliezer? It's like somebody who has a basket that's full of gourds and melons and things like that. If you put in mustard seed, it'll fill in the gaps. According to Rabbi Yoshua, what's it like? It's like a trough of honey. If you start putting in pomegranates and nuts, it's going to overflow over the sides. In other words, if you restrict people too much, they'll just reject the whole thing. That's what Rabbi Yoshua is saying. He's saying this idea of telling people that they can't carry less than daled amot at a time is a bad idea. Because if you close off that strategy, maybe they're just going to say, forget it then, I'm just going to walk with it then. Better that you tell them that that's an option that they have available to them so that they will use it if they need to, and they won't violate Shabbat. Amar Mar, the master said, that if he doesn't have a non-Jew with him, he puts it on the donkey. This is called mechamer, lav de mechamer. In other words, it's not considered a violation of Shabbat necessarily for you, but it's a separate prohibition. It says your animal has to rest on Shabbat. It says you're not allowed to do any malacha with your animal, correct? Lo tasekum malacha atau uvincha v'techa v'avdecha v'amadcha uvhemtecha, right? Uvhemtecha is your animal. So you can't have your animal do work. So why is that any different than you carrying it? It's the same thing. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Abba says, Manichu aleha k'shim alechet. You put it on the animal while it's walking. In other words, it's already walking. So the only time it's considered to be a full violation of Shabbat, to have your animal carry a burden, is the same way it would be for you. What is it for you? If you pick up the item, walk, and then put down the item. But if the animal was already walking, and you put it on him in midstream, he's already walking, so then he didn't start with it on his back. So it's not considered a full melacha for the animal. But wait a second, the animal's going to stop at some point in order to go to the bathroom, right? He's going to pause. So when he pauses and then he starts walking again, now he just picked up the burden and started transporting it for you. And you're responsible for that animal's rest on Shabbat. So the Gemara says, so what do you have to do? When he starts walking, you put it on his back. When he stops to go to the bathroom, you have to take it off of him. And then when he starts walking again, you put it down again. That's the only way you can do it. But if that's the case, why can't you just put it on your friend while he's walking? He also didn't pick it up. So just have your Jewish friend who's walking, put it on his back while he's walking, and it's no problem. So Amar Rav Papa says, Kol shebegufo chayav chatat b'chaviro patuar v'lasur. Anything that if he did it himself, he wouldn't be allowed to. It would be a biblical violation. In other words, if he were to now carry this item and walk with it, and then, daled amot, it would be a violation. He can't put it on his friend and have his friend carry it. Okay, in other words, even though his friend is not fully participating, he can't use his friend as a prop, a vehicle to transport his objects. However, but something which is but doing this kind of a subterfuge with your animal is allowed. So you're not allowed to do it since you're getting around your own biblical violation. You can't do it with a person. With a person, it's rabbinically prohibited. But with an animal, you're allowed to do it. You're allowed to do this kind of thing that you put it on the animal while it's walking. When the animal stops, you pick it up. Then when the animal starts walking again, you put it down again, and that will be and then you can get it till you get home. Amar Rav Adabar says, that if a person has a bag on their back, let's say they're walking with a backpack, and it becomes Shabbat, he says, run to your house until you get home. Dafka ratz, you have to run. Aval kale kalelo, but you can't go slowly. Why? Because since he's just going to be walking leisurely, he'll end up stopping in the middle and walking. In other words, the point is that as long as he's walking and he hasn't stopped, he hasn't picked up in the public domain and put it down in the public domain. Right? He's just walking along the way. So what if he stops at any point for a second to rest and then walks? Now he's just picked up the burden again and he's carrying it. So if he runs, he's going to realize he can't stop. Sof sof kimata labete yifshar dilakai porta vika me'ayel mereshut rabim l'shut yachid. But what about the fact that when he gets home, he's going to have to stop for a second, open the door, and bring his stuff from a public domain to a private domain? Right? Because he's going to have carried it in the public domain. He's going to come to his house and he's going to put it inside.
So it's not work. I mean, if he's saying that, I mean, like take like a little bit. You said the dog, like the dog go to the animal, go to the bathroom. You got to take it off. Then he needs the bathroom and put it back on.
Right.
Isn't that work for you?
Well, it's very technical because it's work, but work is not necessarily goes. The definition of work doesn't necessarily follow effort. So even though it might be effort, it might not necessarily work. So in order for it to be considered work, it has to comply with the exact standard. So the exact standard is that the animal picked up the object and then brings it somewhere else. But if you wait till it's walking and put it on, the animal didn't actually start the motion of the object. So it's considered that you're minimizing it in that case. And it's okay. Now, so what does it say? When you get home, you have to throw it into your house in an unusual way. So since you're doing it in an unusual way, you didn't do it in the normal way, so you minimize the violation again. In other words, you're doing all kinds of things that rabbinically would be prohibited here, for sure. But they allowed you to bend the rabbinic rules in order to save your possessions, because they knew that if they told you couldn't do it, you're just going to carry it. So you throw it into the house in an unusual way, and you're okay. Amar Rabbi Bar Chama. Rabbi Bar Chama says, according to Rabbi Bar Chama, if you lead your animal carrying a burden on Shabbat, then if you did it by accident, you have to bring a korban chatat, and if you did it on purpose, you are chayav sekila. You are 100% liable for violating Shabbat. It is your Shabbat violation to do that. My tama, what's the reason? Amar Rava says, because it says you can't do malacha, you and your animal. What does that mean? Your animal's just like you. Ma hu bishogeg chayav chatat. B'mezir chayav sekila. Af behemto nami bishogeg chayav chatat. B'mezir chayav sekila. Just like if you did malacha on Shabbat, by accident, you bring a sacrifice. On purpose, you're liable to the death penalty if there are witnesses. So too with your animal, it's an extension of you. Like if I cook with a frying pan and a spatula, I don't say I didn't really do the cooking on Shabbat because I used a frying pan and a spatula. And so too, if I transport an object using my animal, it's just an extension of me, according to Rami Bar Chama. So Rava says, no, shetei teshuvot badavar. There are two answers to this. That it says in the Torah that there's one rule for everybody who does things by accident, and for a person who does things on purpose. And that's speaking about the case of idolatry. And we learn the concept of the korban chatat, bringing a sacrifice for an accidental violation. We learn it from the case of idolatry, just like in the case of idolatry. Just like when it comes to idolatry, if you convince your cow to bow down to an idol, you're not responsible for that. It's only when you worship the idol yourself that you're responsible for it. So too here, the same thing. And moreover, it says in the Mishnah that it refers to somebody who violates Shabbat in a way that he would be obligated to bring a korban if it was by accident, and would be liable to the death penalty if it was on purpose. But by saying somebody who violates Shabbat in a way that they're culpable for these punishments means that there are ways you can violate Shabbat where you're not culpable. And what is that referring to? Umaynihu lav de mechamer. Obviously, it's talking about leading your animal carrying a burden. In other words, it's saying that you could violate Shabbat in a certain way, but you wouldn't be liable for it. It must be talking about an animal. So the Gemara says that last proof we can reject. Lo, there are two other situations where there's a biblical violation involved, but you're not liable to punishment. One is going outside the Techum, according to Rabbi Akiva, is a biblical violation. If you leave the city limits more than 2,000 amot, it's a biblical violation. And according to Rabbi Yosei, if you light a fire on Shabbat, it's a biblical violation, but you are not liable for the same punishment as other melachot, as we learned earlier in the Masekhet, according to Rabbi Yossi only. But the point is that we could deflect the last proof and say that, you know what? Maybe really leading your animal carrying a burden is as serious as doing a malacha yourself. And when it discusses a distinction between violating Shabbat that has full consequences and violating Shabbat with lesser consequences, it's not talking about a case of leading your animal. Leading your animal is equivalent to you doing it. But going outside the Tichum is violating Shabbat and it's not equivalent to other melachot. Or lighting a fire is violating Shabbat, according to Rabbi Yossi, is not equivalent to the other melachot. So perhaps that is what the Mishnah was talking about, and therefore we can't prove anything from the Mishnah. But still, the first proof of Rava, that he said that the fact is that idolatry is our model case for the culpability to a korban chatat. The culpability for a korban chatat. And we see that there, the person has to do the action with their own body. It's not what's done with their animal or any surrogate. So too, for melacha to be credited to you or discredited to you in this case, it has to be done by you yourself. And so leading the animal, even though it's a biblical violation to lead your animal carrying a burden on Shabbat, it doesn't accrue to you in the same way as a malacha that you did with your own body. We don't say that the animal is like a vehicle is like a tool, a hammer, and you're hitting a nail in the wall. So you say that the hammer did it. So too, I'm leading the animal. I'll say that that the animal is just a vehicle for me doing the malacha. Since the animal is its own living being, we don't attribute its actions to you in the same way that we would an inanimate tool. And that's why there is this prohibition of mechamer. This prohibition of mechamer is a biblical violation, but it's not on the same level of stringency as the violation of Shabbat with your own body. Now, going back to what we had said before, that Rashi said that there was a machloket tanaim, whether the rabbis were right in prohibiting a person from carrying pachot midaled amot on Shabbat. A person who's stranded, they said that they made a gezerah that he should not, at least not as his first choice. It wasn't endorsed to carry less than 4 amot at a time. And Rashi said that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua were having an argument whether that was a mistake or not. Rabbi Eliezer said it was a good idea to prohibit it because there were too many loopholes. And Rabbi Yoshua said no, closing these loopholes was bad because it overflows the trough. It's too much of a limitation. Tosafot has a different interpretation here. According to Tosafot, he says as follows. This is the Tosafot of Amar Boba Yom Machakusa. He says, before they made the gezerah on giving where they said that you should give your wallet to a non-Jew to carry, you used to carry it less than Daled Amot. That was the procedure. Okay, so כערבה שהייתה מקיעת שהסירו האגוזים והרימונים ואחר שהסירו האגוזים והרימונים שוב לא הגיע יותר. So he says, כך כשגזרו ליתן כיסו לנוכרי, אסרו נמי ללך פחות מדלת אמות. So what he said is, not that Rabbi Yoshua was saying that it was a mistake. In other words, that it was a mistake to... I'm sorry, I should have started further up in the Tosafot, because that's where he mentions Rabbi Eliezer, that when they made the prohibition... and they said that you have to give, when they made the gezerah, when they made the institution that you should give your wallet to a non-Jew to carry, they completed their gezerot. In other words, they completed their, the protection of Shabbat, the safeguarding of Shabbat. Okay? And therefore they didn't need that other thing. Right? Because they completed their safeguarding of Shabbat. And Tosafot says that it wasn't that Rabbi Yoshua was saying they overdid it by making the limitation. They didn't mean that they were Rabbi Yoshua didn't mean that they were putting fruit into an already full trough and that it was overflowing. What he meant was that they were taking fruit out of the full trough. In other words, that there were still some things that once they removed the problem, because they said you could give it to a non-Jew, now they didn't need to worry anymore that you were going to carry it less than 4 amot at a time and maybe carry it more than 4 amot at a time. So they were actually, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, according to Tosafot, were praising the idea that they didn't allow you to carry less than 4 amot at a time anymore, but they were saying that they were giving two different mishalim, two different analogies to understand what they were accomplishing here. But the point was that they both agreed that it was a good idea, that once you had the opportunity or the ability to give your wallet to a non-Jew, you no longer needed this idea of carrying it less than 4 amot, and it was a good thing that they didn't allow you to carry it less than 4 amot anymore. But however, the halacha that's brought in the Shulchan Aruch is that if a person doesn't have any of these available means, he is allowed to carry it less than 4 amot at a time in order to bring it home. That's what the halacha is in the Shulchan Aruch. Well, you stop. You walk 2 amot, stop. Walk 2 amot, stop. Every time you stop, it's considered putting it down, and so you're okay.
It doesn't matter. You could put it down and pick it up again.
But it wouldn't make a difference because when you stop, ha'omed lafush, if a person stops in order to rest for a second, that's considered like putting it down. And that's what we'll conclude for today. So we'll finish at the very, with the 3 words left on the bottom of Kuf Nun Gimel Amud Bet.